There are things that we can hear or we can play that can connect with our joy. There are things that we can hear or play that can connect with our sadness and perhaps help us find ways to work through it. All of us as human beings, we are looking for completion and we are looking for solutions to our problems. We're looking for all of these things. And I think music, for me, the organ especially, provides that for us. No matter what our mood is or what our situation is, there's always the beginning of a piece and there's always the end of a piece. And that's, I think, part of the draw of the instrument. My name is Nicole Keller. I am a concert organist, and I am also on the faculty at the University of Michigan in the School of Music, Theater, and Dance. I love teaching. I love talking about music. I love being in the realm of music. I think it's just such a life-giving thing for me. There's so much we can glean from our regular lives. I hope to give the audience a little bit of something they're familiar with, perhaps a composer or a style of music they're familiar with. And I also hope to leave them with something they'd never heard before. There's always some educational aspect to it for playing. I think people don't encounter the organ in everyday life, so the more we can show them and the more we can explore what an interesting instrument it is and what an orchestra we have at our fingertips, I think the better off we are as organists. I've played a few pieces from the Klavierbuch Susanne von Soldt, which is a collection of pieces compiled for a young woman from the Netherlands. And I find it's an interesting collection because it's the earliest source of keyboard music that we have from the Netherlands. And in a way, it's a source of popular music from its day. It was compiled by her teacher, and there are 33 pieces there. 30 of them were written in one hand, 3 pieces in another hand, and we think that is when she changed teachers when she moved to England. So I find just those details really, really interesting, and it's a really good look at popular music of that time period for sure. And the other piece is a Toccata in F by Dieterich Buxtehude. He was a real powerhouse teacher, performer, church musician in his day, very, very well known. People came from all over to hear him play and to hear the church music scene in his area. And it's a piece that is very improvisatory, so it's a lot of fun for me to create that atmosphere around it. I did come from a musical family. My mother and grandmother were organists in the African Methodist Episcopal Church just outside of Philadelphia. I started on the piano, though. I really didn't want to have anything to do with the organ. My father was also a minister, so I was trying to run very quickly in the other direction. I sang in choirs in school, and I took piano lessons, and that was really important to my mother and my grandmother in particular. So there was always music around. There was always, LPs playing in some fashion. And I remember my mother had a cassette tape at that time. I think it was called The Best of Bach. And it had Bach in many different ways. And I remember listening to that over and over and over again. And I think I didn't realize until I got older, what an impact those sounds had in my head. And I remember I got to the point where I was playing some of those pieces that I suddenly remembered from that cassette tape. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's why this sounds so familiar, because this is sort of playing right out of my childhood and now is sort of right before me. So it was an interesting completion of a journey for me as a musician. I met David Higgs, I think it was my senior year in my undergraduate degree, and I was just starting to think about whether or not I was going to go to graduate school for organ or for piano. And he was really unlike any teacher I had met before, and there was something very visceral about his musicianship. He was a pretty down-to-earth guy from New York, from the Bronx, I believe he was. And I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and there's a particular East Coast vibe, I think, that we all share. And for me, I felt sort of like I'd kind of known him before and felt very, very comfortable with him. He helped me to think about music differently, to think about it more organically, more naturally, and I see him doing that for a lot of his students, and I think that's so important. We teach the notes, we teach the history, we teach all of these things, but reaching out and seeing the student and grabbing the student and figuring out what they need and giving it to them, whether they want it or not, I think is one of the most important jobs we have as a teacher, for sure. Students these days come from a lot of different areas. A lot of students have a lot of familiarity with church music and encountered the organ in church, and that is shifting now. There are students who heard organ music in a movie, or they saw it in a concert hall, and they don't have any of the history that a lot of us have as church organists. So it's a completely different perspective to the instrument. And a lot of our non-majors who are taking organ for fun or taking it because they're really interested in it, a lot of them come from outside of the music school at the University of Michigan. It's not unusual to get engineering students, to get students who are studying to become doctors, students who are studying to become lawyers, architects. I have a student who is an art history major. So there's a lot of parallels that we can make within their own field of study to music. And that's, I think, one of the most, human aspects of music, is that it has tendrils that reach out into almost every single subject area that we can make connections with, and therefore connect with people. When we're working on pieces, we're working on repertoire, we're working on technique, talking about the challenges that we're having and the parallels of the challenges kind of that we have in our normal lives. A lot of issues sometimes with technique and expression for students comes from lack of confidence, and I will often ask them, what is the thing you feel the most confident about in your life? What is the thing that gives you the most joy in life? What makes you the most excited? And how can we in some way incorporate that into the music that we're making? Does this piece draw this out of you in any way? And trying to get them to think about it as more than just notes that they have to learn, something that they have to memorize, but the story that they are telling, not just their audience, but that they're telling themselves and living themselves and reliving and improvising themselves when they actually perform. I would tell a student who is interested in the organ that, first of all, to try to listen to it in person as much as possible. Recordings are great these days, but the feeling of being in the room with that sound moving and the wind moving is like nothing else. So every opportunity they can have that experience, whether it's going to some concert as a church or sneak in the back of a church service or something just to hear the postlude, finding any way to be near the instrument as much as possible. And then, of course, finding places to practice. If it means walking down the street to the church that's on your corner and knocking on the door and talking to the organist and say, hey, I'm really interested. Could I potentially have lessons with you? Or could I potentially, like an hour a week, can I just come and play the organ and feel it out and see what this new instrument is like? But I think that exploration is really important. It's very important that we first look at the pipe organ as an instrument, as a way we express ourselves musically, as a way we express ourselves as human beings. And I know most people connect the instrument with the church because it's where we find most of the instruments, quite frankly. And everyone doesn't have a relationship with the church. That has changed a lot. But I know that we do need to start thinking a lot wider about what the instrument is, what it can be, what type of vehicle for human expression it certainly can be. I would say that if it were any other instrument, it happens to be a large instrument that needs a very large room in order for it to speak well, so that in some ways makes it harder because it's very expensive to take care of. But gosh, the more we can get the instrument in front of people and show them how it works and show them what the inside of it looks like and show them what we do at the console and how how intricate it is, but how simple it is at the same time. I think there is so much to be fascinated about, and there's something for everyone. If you love Baroque music, of course, there's plenty of that for you. If you love modern music, there's also plenty of that for you as well, and everything in between. And I hope as a field that we certainly get better at bringing people in so that more people can see what a fantastic instrument it truly is.